The Russian campaign on the Ukrainian electrical system is about turning off the power and the water and the gas and making as many Ukrainians, millions as possible, have a thoroughly miserable winter. And that is about doing two things. It's about depleting the will of the Ukrainian people to stick with the war and to ask their government to make it to stop, and also just to make it harder. So it's not just houses that are in trouble here, it's factories and transport and things like that. So it will add grit into the wheel of the Ukrainian war machine. But it's not a sign of desperation. It's a sign of how you wage war of a war of this type, by bearing down on the civil population and the industrial effort as much as you do on the military. This is all about Russia trying to degrade the will of the Ukrainian people to keep supporting the war. And we must remember that for many Russians, and many more Russians than just President Putin, they don't think Ukraine should exist. They think it should be part of a Russian empire. It should be under the Russian sphere of influence, and the state called Ukraine should be removed, and it should be returned to the status of the Ukraine of the former Soviet Union. So they won't worry a whole lot about the misery that they're inflicting on Ukraine. And so I think we should see this as a symptom of a war that's going to go on for a very long time, where the stakes are very high and the costs are going to be immense. And yes, there'll come a moment when the shooting stops and things have to be rebuilt. The Russian preferred way of organizing for war was to create battalion tactical groups, typically 800 to 1,000 strong, and there'd be a mixture of infantry and tanks and artillery and supporting services. And they've found this hasn't been terribly successful. Not enough infantry to maintain momentum in the attack, not enough artillery to concentrate fire and be successful. And they have simply found that in creating these units against very stiff and thoughtful Ukrainian defense, that they have been depleted, and they've run out of infantry, and they've not had the impact that they would want with their firepower. They've also lost many leaders. I mean, the casualties in this war on both sides are probably around now 1/3 people. So lots of NCOs and junior officers have been killed or incapacitated. And a battalion tactical group needs strong leadership to work. And I think what they're having to do is to blob up essentially a lot of untrained people and concentrate their artillery under fewer leaders in order to try and make them basically effective. From the Ukrainian perspective, they have no intent to reduce the momentum or let up pressure on the Russian side. But they have got to contend with the reality that they've had a very hard year, that they have people that they need to train and organize. They need to build up stocks of ammunition and weapons and logistics. And so the equal danger for Ukraine is that they get essentially carried away and hurl themselves not well enough prepared at sufficiently strong Russian defenses, and are defeated. They don't break through and they take significant casualties. So some of the lower hanging fruit of Russian occupied territory, so for example up around Kharkiv and as it turned out, the battle for Kherson in the south, that's gone now. And working out where to strike effectively against more concentrated Russian defenses with enough combat power to be successful is, I think, quite a conundrum for them. And a lot of people will worry that in trying to maintain momentum, that Ukraine would now overreach and inflict essentially a defeat on itself. So in this war, it's going to go long. Time and timing really matter. And the important thing is to retain the initiative by deciding where to act, when to act, and doing it with sufficient force to win.